Hello and welcome to the Keep Right On podcast. I'm Brian Dick and I'm reunited with my colleague and co-host Alex Dicken as we look back at Birmingham City's start to the season and their transfer window, which saw an inordinate amount of players come to St Andrews and quite a few leave as well. So Alex, how are you doing? You well?
Good, thank you. They don't do quiet transfer windows and definitely don't do quiet deadline days. Even when we thought they wouldn't do much, they ended up doing about 6 deals. So, yes, well rested from a week of nothing since transfer deadline day, and I'm presuming you are as well, Brian.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, let's just delay the table a little bit. As I said, we're going to look at the results from the first month of the season, the performances as well, because obviously performances are probably even more important than results, coaches would say. We'll look at what changes we've noticed in the team following the step up to the Championship, and inevitably we'll be picking through the new signings that arrived. So, Alex, let's start with results. Blues are 10th in table, I think I'm right in saying, and they're rolling along at just under 2 points a game, 7 points from 4 games. Obviously, the 2 points a game cut-off is what everyone says you need to be hitting to be in the playoff or the promotion picture. Results, not too bad, are they? Do we think probably even better than not bad? They're quite good. Would you agree?
Yeah, when you consider the teams Blues have played, they've played 2 teams I think will be up there and 2 teams I think will be down there. So far, and they've beaten the 2 that we think will be down there, and they've got 1 point from 2 games against the 2 that we think will be up there. So I don't think it's a bad return playing Leicester away. Leicester have some exceptional players, even though I wasn't massively impressed by them on the night. They've got players that can win games at this level. Abdul Fatawu is a potential Championship Player of the Year, isn't he? So, losing to a goal from him, and one goal that was a little bit controversial because maybe Ricardo Pereira, again, let's not forget, a fully fledged Portuguese international, maybe shouldn't have been on the pitch, but it's no disgrace, is it? The goals they conceded on the night, it just wasn't to be. And there will be games like this throughout this season. Blues aren't going to steamroll the Championship like they steamrolled League One. But yeah, Ipswich, I think it was probably a good time to play them. Blues might have, went away from that game feeling like they should have won. They had the better chances, and albeit for a slightly controversial penalty at the end, they would have won that game. So that was unfortunate. They won the next 2 games. Blackburn, a team that Blues have always fared quite badly against in the Championship, and Oxford, a go-out team, we know what they will do. So I think it's been a good start. It's been nothing more. It's been a good start, a solid start, and we're going to come on to it at some stage, but I think, the next 5 games, which will take Blues to 9 games for the next international break, is probably going to be more of a clear indication as to where they are and what they can do this season, I think.
Yeah, indeed. So if you look at the Ipswich result, you'd have said, a home point against a Premier League team, albeit one that was slightly changed. Not a bad result. Sheffield United was a good result. Blackburn was a good result. Oxford was a good result. Port Vale was a bad result, wasn't it? Let's not dress it up to be anything other than it was. And Leicester City was, it was a you want a point really from Leicester City the way they played, wouldn't you? So yeah, par or just over or under, whichever is the good one in terms of accruing points. Blues are rolling along pretty well. Performances, I thought the Ipswich performance, Alex, was really good, didn't you?
Yeah, that was, it felt like a night where everything came together. One team was completely drilled, knew exactly what they wanted to do in that game. And I think the other team had real teething issues. And we've seen a lot of those Ipswich players, or at least a chunk of them, move on after that game and go elsewhere at the end of the transfer window. So they'll look different next time Blues play them. Blues that night, I think the main thing I'll take away from that night, I think Kyogo Furuhashi was really, really good. And I don't think he's hit that level since. And maybe that's an issue that Blues are trying to navigate through and getting the best out of him, because I think he caught Ipswich cold that night with his runs in behind. He hit the woodwork twice, could have had a goal or 2. Yeah. And I think one did lead to Stansfield scoring. So he looks really good, and it worked really well that night. And it hasn't worked quite so well since, is what I would say. But yeah, that's probably a good example. I'd say that is the best performance we've seen. That's kind of the level they need to get to, because they were the dominant force in that game.
I thought the Sheffield United performance was good as well, and I thought Kyogo was good in that game, with everything apart from, and so we'll surely come on to the finishing touch. Blackburn performance, it was okay. Listen, it was away from home, as you said, against a team at a place where Blues rarely do well. The Blackburn performance was solid enough, and similar to the sort of the Leicester game, it was Blues that came up with the sort of coherent, quality attacking moments to win that game. Whereas at Leicester, it was obviously City that came up with those moments. So the Blackburn performance was fine, had no issues with that. I actually thought the Oxford performance was a decent standard as well. I thought Blues should have been well clear, won by 2 or 3 goals really that day. I thought they handled Oxford really well. The Port Vale performance, we probably don't need to go into why, other than the fact there was it 10 changes on the day. That explains it, and it was subpar, and it was a bad night at the office. Then the Leicester performance, I actually didn't think there was too much between the teams. Indeed, you could probably give Blues, say Blues give them 6 out of 10, and Leicester 4 out of 10, or 60% of the game, and then it was just those 2 attacking moments, wasn't it? Monga produced a bit of quality, and as you said, Fatawu produced a bit of quality. There was a bit of breakdown in the 2 breakdowns in the Blues defence where there wasn't any in the Leicester defence, and that ultimately proved to be the difference between the 2 sides. But in terms of, you just look at the way these teams were matching up against each other, I thought Blues were just as good as Leicester, apart from the clinical bits.
Yeah, I think in all 4 games, you can kind of see the real tight margins that Blues are up against this season.
Exactly.
They've scored 4, conceded 4 in the league. So, they've won 2 games by 1 goal. It's going to be like that throughout the entire season, basically. Blues aren't going to... They didn't steamroll teams last season, apart from Barnsley. And I think it's going to be very tight wins. And, they have shown over the last 12 months that in those tight games, they do invariably come out on top, and they do have that will and way to win. So hopefully it is more that case than the other.
Yeah, as you say, Stoke this weekend, they've won 3 of their 4. That is going to be, another big indication of where Blues are. Last season, maybe they, as you said, they didn't overwhelm a team, or they were involved in quite a few arm wrestles last season, and it was them that produced the moments of quality to win the game. Against Leicester, it was the other way around, wasn't it? Just a couple of red rags to the XG haters bull, I suppose. Let's put it that way. I don't mind XG. I think it's a constructive guide, but it's not the be all and the end all. But I would say the goals, expected goals for and the expected goals against, probably do give us an illustration of where Blues are performance wise, don't they? So in terms of expected goals for, Blues are 7th in the league with an expected rate of 6.82, but then they've only scored 4 of that 6.82. The expected goals against, now this is very Chris Davies, and he'll probably love this, is they're 2nd in the league with only 2.6 expected goals against. The reality is they've conceded 4. But if you're looking at those 2 indicators, expected goals for and expected goals against, the performance levels are on track, aren't they?
Yeah, and I do think we have to kind of, once upon a time, I might have been an XG denier, but I think we do have to take these into account, because managers at clubs, Chris Davies being one of them, will look at these statistics and kind of not justify their work, but, kind of give themselves a little bit of belief in what they are doing, because, you can lose 3 games 1-0, but you might have absolutely battered a team on XG in all of them. And that's an indication that as you go through the season, results are going to get better. So I do think it's important to look at them, and you can kind of see where the differences come in each of those stats for and against. So you look at the Oxford game where Kyogo's missed those 2 quite clear chances, and that's probably why Blues are slightly behind on that stat. And if you look at the Leicester game where Blues have probably given away that first goal because that was a defensive error for me, Ethan Laird could have come out, Peck could have closed the angle on Fatawu a little bit better as well. So they've lost the goal there. So they are a good indicator, I think. And you hope it kind of continues along that trajectory and evens itself out in terms of the results they are getting with them. yeah, I'm quite encouraged by that stat, Brian.
Yeah, indeed. As we say, it's one indicator. It's not the whole picture, is it? What have we noticed that's different about Blues this season? I'm not just talking in terms of like the identity of the people playing in attacking positions, but in the way the team is functioning, the blue machine, as Chris Davies and Jay Stansfield referred to it as. What have we noticed about as I say, the slight tweaks that have been made in the summer, maybe because of the higher standard they're playing against now?
Yeah, I think the obvious one is at the back, where you've now got Christoph Clara playing on the left, which means that in possession he is in the centre of that back three as Blues build up, with ordinarily Alex Cochrane to his left and Phil Neumann now to his right. Obviously, because Blues Chris Davies is aware that Clara is not the fastest player in the world, and that if he was to get isolated in those wide areas against against a Fatawa or a Mavadidi on the night against Leicester, then it probably wouldn't have ended particularly well for Clara, or would have at least ended in a booking. So that's a significant change Blues have made. I'm interested to see how that plays out, because ordinarily you would want someone who's more comfortable on the left foot playing in that position. Ben Davies did it last season and he was excellent on the ball, obviously a left-footed player as well. And Christian Bielik probably more comfortable with his left foot playing out than Christoph Clara would be, I'd say. So that's an interesting one to watch, although we must say so far Clara has been very good and he's carried on from where he left off last season. Another little detail I've noticed is that Peck is sticking closer to Iwata this season than he did last season. Yeah. So last season, we talked a million times in this podcast, didn't we, about how Peck was drifting over to the left, sometimes drifting over to the right to pick up positions when Blues were in possession that he could hurt the opposition. And I've seen less of that so far this season. Tells me Blues are going for a more orthodox midfield pairing. Peck's obviously got more freedom than Iwata, but he is still slightly closer. Another thing I'm preparing for, but I haven't yet noticed, is the position of Marvin Dukes in the attack, because he's a very, if we think he's going to potentially play as a number 10 sometimes, or number 10 for us, you can use the German terminology, Brian, if you want to.
What, Raumdeuter?
Raumdeuter, yes. That's a word we might hear at some stage this season, not from Chris Davies, definitely from Brian and me. So yeah, if we think he's going to potentially play as a 10 or a second striker at times behind a Stansfield or behind a Kyogo, he's going to play it very differently to what Willem Willemsen would have played it as last season, what Luke Harris would have played it as last season. You're probably going to see less of the kind of, little intricate passing phases and more him, sniffing out the spaces, which is what Raumdeuter means, isn't it? And, finding those spaces where he can really hurt the opposition and score goals and create goals. He's got an absolutely exceptional record of doing that for Werder Bremen in Germany over the last few years. So, hopefully he's the kind of different type of number 10 second striker that the Blues need and can thrive in the Championship when he's fully fitted up to speed. But that's something I'm expecting to see a little bit further down the line.
Yeah. The other thing that's been enforced has been obviously with Alex Cochrane's shortish injury, having to play Ethan Laird at left back. It's taken away the left foot, hasn't it? And obviously Clara, in build-up hasn't got that left foot as well. So, listen, Laird's done really well, but that's probably impacted the way that Blues have attacked down the left, and even whichever of their wingers has been playing on the left, it's changed their role ever so slightly as well, just because of the passing angles, and it's slightly harder to get round the side of an opposition with a right foot playing on the left, because you haven't got that same angle down the line, or the passing lanes are slightly different. So, that's not to say that Ethan Laird's done anything them really well, because he has done really well, and he's actually impacted games when he's played in that role. But yeah, that's an enforced one, and it'll be. We assume Cochrane will come back in, don't we, for Stoke this weekend, because of the left-footedness, and the fact that he's very much is he Chris Davies' favourite? I think he is, isn't he? We can go that far, can't we? From the way the manager's spoken about him.
Yeah, to play 50-odd games or whatever already. I think Jack Robinson's actually interesting, when we come on to the new signs. I think he's going to be... He feels like he could be a like-for-like in that position, not necessarily give you what Cochrane gives you going forward, because he's a very different build and type of player, and he's more of a centre-back. But with the way that Blues do build up from the back, with that kind of left-footed player who inverts, Robinson should be able to play that position.
Yeah, indeed. So that will evolve. And as we say, when Cochrane returns to fitness, then, that may not even be a slight change at all. What I've noticed, Alex, is there hasn't been many minutes for any of the loan players. I think earlier in the summer, we were sitting here saying, James Beadle's been brought in to play because why would Brighton send a young goalkeeper out to sit on the bench? And that's exactly what he's done, apart from a couple of the short-lived Carabao Cup campaign. Aaron Cashin, again, he's been used in very limited fashion. Tommy Doyle, I don't know if you're of the mindset of me. I'd love Doyle to be let off the leash a little bit, or and by that I mean given more minutes, not tactically set free, because I don't think we're even scratching the surface of what he can do and the pedigree he's got. Kumas, am I right in saying that Kumas is the only one that has actually started a championship game? I think that's right, isn't it?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. And that was against Leicester. And who's the other one? Who's the other loan player?
Oh no, it's Patrick Roberts.
Patrick Roberts. Okay, yeah, indeed. So you'd expect him to start quite a few, wouldn't you? I would imagine. Well, has Davis said anything to you about how he intends to bleed the loan players in, or is it just a case of last season's team did well enough to keep their places, but there is someone, with a slightly higher pedigree behind them now?
Yeah, so I think Dave is quite clear with both of us separately about Beadle, in that he's kind of come here to fight for his place. And we didn't think that at the time. We thought, loan player comes in, highly rated goalkeeper, trained with the England seniors already, definitely coming to play, but clearly ready to fight for his place as Blues number one. And Ryan Allsop hasn't really done anything wrong so far. Interestingly, if you look at the XG stat we were talking about earlier, that's probably also going to be an indication of how well Ryan Allsop is doing over this season, isn't it, as well? So, if that kind of XG stat remains low and goals are high, that normally means the goalkeeper is letting in, preventable ones. So that's something to keep an eye on there. But, as far as we've been told, Beadle's come to fight for his place, and Allsop, as things stand, hasn't done anything wrong. So it's his shirt to lose. Cashin, I felt, was a bit of a strange signing. Chris Davies has talked him up a few times. I think obviously noted that he's smaller than the usual centre-back that Blues have gone for when you look at Neumann, Clara, even Christian Bielik last year, Ben Davies, and noted his jumping and aerial quality. I find it difficult to see Cashin playing unless Neumann has a bad spell and Chris Davies decides that Clara is better suited on the right and wants a left-footed player in his back line again. In which case, he's also got Jack Robinson now.
Yeah,
Robinson was playing in the playoff final last year and captain in Sheffield United. He's going to be a really, really good option for Chris Davies if that happens.
Indeed, as a permanent player as well, not on loan as well. So, yeah, that move clearly makes it harder for Cashin to get in the side. I think, yeah, absolutely.
100%. He's the one the signing that can confuse me a little bit at the time, because again, they do come into play and I just didn't quite see a route into the 11. Maybe that will change. Tommy Doyle, a player who really confuses, because we're looking at where does he fit in. The two central midfield players are almost set in stone when they're both fit. So there's going to have to be an element of rotation there. Davis tried to field Doyle in the number 10 position in pre-season. Again, Blues are very well stocked in that position now, with Jay Stansfield has played there this season. We mentioned Marvin Duksh. He's probably going to be primed for that role as well. Williamson's still in the squad. Kanya Fujimoto, we haven't even seen in the league yet. So there's a lot of competition for that place. And, the attacking, or Doyle is probably the least attacking option of those options. So I think his minutes are probably going to have to come in the deeper role. So he's going to be battling Peck and Awata for a place in the team, and he's a very different player to both of them. But albeit quite a talented and high quality player, so he's got to fit in somewhere and get enough minutes to make it worth his while and also Blues' while. This move, so that's one to watch. I think we'll see him more over the coming weeks because we've barely seen him so far. Kumas, I was really surprised that he started at Leicester.
Yeah.
I know he was probably the best player on the pitch, or the best Blues player on the pitch, at least against Port Vale, but that wasn't really saying much. I liked his endeavour and work rate against Port Vale. Again, I liked his work rate against Leicester. I thought he might have gone off a little bit earlier than he did. I thought he was flagging a bit in the second half, and that's to be expected given that he's not played millions of pre-season minutes like other players will have. So I was surprised that he lasted 77 minutes, I think it was. But Chris Davies clearly has taken a bit of a shine to him. A lone player coming from Liverpool, you would expect him to feature prominently. But again, they've signed Patrick Roberts on deadline day. I think he looks tailor-made for that right-wing role, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely does, yeah.
Then it's over to Kumas to get into his preferred left-wing position, and Damari Gray's there. So, it looks difficult for him. I've no doubt he'll get minutes over the course of a season, but it looks difficult for him to really nail down a starting role if this season goes as we hope and expect it does for those important players in the attacking third for Blues.
Yeah, the attacking soup is quite rich now, isn't it? With Kumas and Roberts and Gray and Dukes and Fujimoto and Stansfield and Willemsen and Keshi Anderson. There's so many different styles and different combinations that you could pick from there. And whilst that's obviously a good thing as well, you do wonder if it's going to take Davies a little bit of time to find out, even if he will settle on an attacking three. I think last season he did settle on an attacking three, didn't he? And we became really quite used to the Anderson, Willemsen, Stansfield with May up top. That kind of hockey line almost, where you've got this consistent set lineup. There's so many variables, and we don't know about Fujimoto. Kumas has sort of played as a right-sided 10, didn't he? Really against Leicester, and I thought, that's I was kind of expecting him to be more of a chalk on the boots winger. There's so many variables. And I suppose you just hope that the international break has been used with Davies sifting through those variables and seeing what patterns what attacking patterns he can come up with. Yeah,
well, a lot of those players that we've mentioned there will have gone away during the international break. I do feel like because there are so many options, you're probably going to see 2 or 3 players this year, particularly with a manager like Chris Davies, who showed us last season that he's not massively into rotation, even when the schedule is busier than it will be this season. That some of those players are probably not going to play many minutes at all. That if they don't get into the team in the next month or two and get into the squad, and even if they're coming off the bench for 25, 30 minutes at a time, they're getting minutes. There are going to be players that I think are probably just going to quickly fall by the wayside because it is so congested in those forward areas. They've probably got maybe an extra body or two, I think, to what they might need. Chris Davies will probably disagree with me because they've got, I think, 24, 25-man squad, haven't they? If you look at the whole picture. But they've got a lot of players in similar positions. Like they've got 3 players for that left-wing position now. They've got 3 players for the right-wing position. They've got Lyndon Dykes and Marvin Duksh, Jay Stansfield, Kyogo. Forwards generally are the players who get more minutes and come off the bench more, aren't they? But there are going to be players 2 or 3 who don't get that many minutes, I think.
Yeah, indeed. Let's move it on. Just before we go into the specifics or treat the new signings individually, and again, it's slightly old news. The transfer window's been closed a week, so we won't go massively into a great deal of depth. We'll just give some loose thoughts about each of the players that have signed. But just in terms of the themes of the 7 permanents and 5 loans, the one thing that kind of leaps out a little bit, isn't it, is they've signed some experience, haven't they, this summer?
Yeah, I touched on this with Chris Davies when I spoke to him late July. That kind of the age profile of the players that they were signing were all quite, late 20s, early 30s. A lot of them anyway. I think six of the 12 are 28 or older.
That's Neumann, Gray, Furuhashi, Duksh, Robinson, and Patrick Roberts.
Yeah, so they've got 6 or 12 that are 28 or over. They've got 3 players they've signed in their 30s. Robinson signed a 2-year deal. Kyogo and Duksh have got 3-year contracts. And he said that kind of, he looks at it, when they sign players, they look at the value of the deal and, whether they can potentially, recoup, make their money back or make money on these players before making decisions. But then he also said, ultimately, I do value experience. You know, he referred to Kieran Dowell, who came in at 27 last season, Grant Hanley also, who came in January, and said how much he used them in the second half of the season, how much he valued them.
Yeah.
In that when there's pressure on, he seems to think these players are obviously better equipped to deal with it than players who might be early 20s. And I suppose that's a fair comment, isn't it? You know, these players, you know, Damari Gray in particular, Bryce Samuel, who's 27, Kyogo's played at Celtic, very big club. Marvin Dukes played for Germany. You know, Jack Robinson's won promotion to the Premier League once, played 2 seasons there for Sheffield United, missed out in the playoffs twice, like in the last 5 years of his career. So they've been there and done it, haven't they? So when the moments are big later in the season, he hopes that obviously that's going to, you know, bear fruit for Blues, and that they're going to be able to cope a little bit better under the pressure than some of their rivals who may have gone for younger, more promising players in the summer.
Yeah, indeed. We don't need to name, you know, all a 25-man team this weekend, do we? It's a squad for the season. Let's go sort of whistle stop through the individuals that have arrived. There's probably 2 or 3 here that probably don't demand too much discussion. I'll offer you Damari Gray, an absolute no-brainer of a deal. Looks high quality, and he's going to, I think, probably end the season with, you know, maybe 10 assists and 5 goals. So we don't really need to debate Damari, do we? Too much?
No.
So we'll wave him through. Anyone else you'd like to just say good signing, solid signing, absolute no question about that, and we can see them contributing?
I think Asai Samuel as well.
Yeah,
I think early doors. Yeah, we've seen he's good. So throw him through. Okie
doke. So, which by implication means the other ones have all got question marks. Is that what you're saying?
Probably. You know, I'd also. I'm not throwing them through, but we know little about them in terms of in a blue shirt so far, don't we? Jack Robinson and Patrick Roberts. Their recent career history suggests they can only be good signings and useful players.
Yeah.
Robinson's been a really solid player. Played so many minutes for Sheffield United over the last 4 years, whereas Roberts again, ever present last year for Sunderland, virtually ever present a few years ago, and they made the playoffs in the Championship. So they both look very good signings on paper.
Yeah, they do.
The others, I think, are where the question marks are. You know, how good is Tommy Doyle going to be this season? How much of a role is Aaron Cashin going to play? How much of a role is Lewis Kumas going to play? Is he going to show you that he's better now than he was when he was on loan at Stoke last season and got 3 goals, 4 assists? How influential is Marvin Dukes going to be? Are we going to see the player that Werder Bremen had for 4 years, who got 80 goal contributions or whatever it was? Are we going to see that player, or are we going to see a player who's kind of over the hill and Werder Bremen have let him go at the right age, thinking that they've had his best football? Same probably goes for Kyogo. You know, speaking to Ryan McDonald about him, who obviously covers Celtic for the Daily Record, he said that he thinks Celtic have had Kyogo's best years.
Yeah, he did say that, didn't he? Yeah.
So are Blues going to get another very good year out of him? Is he going to be able to score goals in England? There are question marks. Phil Neumann, is he? He's excellent, I thought, against Ipswich in his first game, and then there's just been a couple of question marks in the last week in the games against Port Vale and Leicester. Interestingly, I was speaking to someone over in Germany about Phil Neumann, and they suggested to me that when he was playing for Hanover, although he was physically a supreme defender, he was 6'4", great in the air, fast, really fast, great recovery speed. As we've seen, a lot of teams would allow him to have the ball and bring it out because they didn't rate him as highly on the ball as some of his teammates, and they would wait for him to make the mistake and press him. Right. So that's something, because I watched him against Port Vale bringing the ball out, and quite late on, I know, and there weren't millions of options. Blues players weren't offering left, right and centre. But, he gave the ball away quite carelessly, I thought, on a couple of occasions. So that's something to watch as well. But, generally, I think a lot of the signings Blues have made look good on paper. It's just kind of what version we're going to get of them this season.
Yeah, just on the Neumann one, we saw really good, didn't we, and really quite impressive at the start. And then, as you say, a couple of games where you thought, you maybe had a couple of question marks. What I would say is 4, 5, 6 games, how many they've been in, you're not really pressing the panic button on an experienced, overseas defender coming to the Championship for the first time. And those physical tools will count for an awful lot, I think, with Neumann. So happy to see where he beds in. For Ahashi, we've spoken about the missed chances. you do wonder if that's just going to be the way it's going to be. You know, whether he ends up with 12 goals from, let's say, an
100
expected
chances.
Yeah, exactly. We have spoken to people that have said, he's not a high. What's the phrase? A
High
high
percentage
ratio. Yeah, high percentage finisher, and that might just be that. In which case, his place will come under threat because Jay's been finishing really well so far this season, and you'd have to think, I'm not seeing Dux play in the flesh in terms of a fully fit, up to speed Dux in playing in Germany. We've only seen, the slightly underprepared one so far, haven't we? But his goal in intervention record is unbelievable from over there. So from playing in Germany. So yeah, I wonder what becomes of Kyogo, and he's going to be judged on goals. His pressing is supreme. His movement is excellent. I wonder if Blues are finding him as well as they possibly can, and we're not getting bogged down in the Scott Hogan debate here, because the comparison is absolutely so unfair. It's unbelievable. But yeah, the jury's still out on Kyogo a little bit. Jack Robinson, I would say, when Blues are getting pinged for their fifth failure to control their own players because they've had a scrap, or they've all congregated around a referee or something like that, you can absolutely see Jack Robinson in the middle of that, can't you? Play in the way that Ben Davies was last season, and that's a good thing. Don't mind that at all. Fujimoto, again, we're just not seeing enough, I don't think, to draw any conclusion so far. Beadle's done okay when he's been in, hasn't he, in the 2 games that he came in?
Yeah, I actually thought against Port Vale that he was, arguably man of the match. I know I gave that to Kumas earlier, but Beadle didn't do anything wrong. He wasn't at fault for the goal. He made a couple of really good saves in the first half from when Port Vale were laying siege on Blues goal from set pieces. So yeah, I'm not saying impressed by Beadle because we've not seen enough of him, but I don't think he's done anything wrong when he's played.
No, he hasn't. But what you would say is you still feel that Ryan Alsop exudes that confidence that gives you and fans and his teammates confidence, doesn't he? And I don't necessarily see that in Beadle just yet on limited opportunities. Patrick Roberts is the other one I want to touch on. Just a lovely footballer, isn't he? Not sure I'd go as far as mini Messi.
How can you be mini Messi?
Indeed, yeah. But we've seen him play against Blues and really clever carrying the ball, finds space really well. Pretty effective in terms of goal interventions as well. So yeah, Patrick Roberts is a really solid signing. Let's move it on. Any other departures that bother you? I suppose the ones that stick out are Gardner Hickman to Blackburn on deadline day, Christian Bielik to Albion, and I suppose sort of a slightly bittersweet one is George Hall from the those of us who've watched him at Blues for many years. Any comment worthy ones there, or any ones that you're maybe surprised that didn't go out? I know Lyndon Dykes came quite close.
Yeah, we're both George Hall fans, aren't we? I think that one for us more like a kind of personal attachment, having watched him do so well as an 18, 19-year-old in the Championship, and kind of been frustrated by his injuries that obviously were just bad luck and weren't his fault. So yeah, it was always going to happen. He was never going to play this season at Blues, was he? Maybe they could have kept him around a bit last season, I felt, and given him chances. If he was going to play 20 games for Walsall last season, why couldn't he have played them for Blues? That's what I felt, and maybe have a better look at him in this system and give him more of a chance. Chris Davies, to be fair, he did have a look at him in pre-season and still kind of arrived at the conclusion that even though he'd impressed and done very well behind the scenes, he just wasn't going to get the minutes. Bielik is probably the one I've been saying is the question mark over the last week, because I do look at those West Bromwich Albion central defensive options now, including Bielik in that, and think, oh, they're really, really good. And I look at Blues and think they're good, but are they drastically better than they were, a month ago? maybe. Could they have kept Bielik in the mix? Would he have been that far down the pecking order? I understand as an experienced player who's your captain, you probably don't want him sitting on the sidelines the whole season. And whether Bielik would have been happy with that, I'm not too sure. I know he's very happy in the area, hence why he's moved and jumped at the chance to join West Bromwich Albion. But that one, for me, I'm just a little bit unsure over whether only time will tell really whether it was the kind of correct call to phase him out and go with Cashin and Robinson as your backup options.
Okay, then, Alex, I'll just jump in there. So if I offer you last season's quartet of centre-backs...
You're a horrible man.
We're looking at Clara, we're looking at Bielik, we're looking at Ben Davies, and we're looking at Grant Hanley. Is that all of them? I think it was. Yeah. So you've got those four, and then you've got the ones from this season: Neumann, Clara, Robinson, and Cashin. I feel that's better.
Which one's better?
So I feel the Championship one is this season's version is better.
I do.
So there's more pedigree and more ceiling in terms of Neumann and Cashin.
Yeah. You go. I think you're going with ceiling on Cashin, aren't you? Because his body of work is largely League One. With Derby County, he played half a season in the Championship, maybe a little bit more when he was younger, but half a proper season of the Championship before moving to Brighton. So I don't think we've got a massive body of work in the Championship to be impressed by with Cashin. You can be impressed by what he did with Derby in League One. Jack Robinson, massively. He's played his last 5 years, and he's 32. He's not completely over the hill, is he? So he's played his last 5 years at the top end of the Championship, lower Premier League. So I've no issue with that at all. People will say he wasn't the easiest on the eye Sheffield United defender, wasn't the best Sheffield United defender, but he was the one that the 3 or 4 managers they had during that time constantly picked. There's a reason they all picked him. So I think that looks a very good signing. Probably one they would have been quite surprised to get so late in the window. Obviously, a door open there at Sheffield United with Ben Mee going in there, as well as 15 other centre-backs by the looks of it as well. So, so they're clearly well stocked. And I think to get Jack Robinson over the line late on, given that he can at a push play left-back as well, particularly the way Blues play left-back, I think that was a really astute signing.
It just tilted the balance, didn't it? Where you become more comfortable with Bielik going. Absolutely. Yeah. All of which, 12 in, I can't remember how many out, but a few of last season contributors out. Sanderson, obviously, Alfie May, people like that. Are there any gaps in the squad that weren't addressed or will need to be addressed in January, do you feel?
The only one is left back, and I think that largely depends on whether Lee Buchanan is fully up to speed by January or December time. And whether he is able to contribute in the way Chris Davies wants him to. I actually think it would have been a right good battle between him and Alex Cochrane last season. I think when Buchanan came back from injury over Christmas and played so well in those 2 or 3 games, I thought, hang on, he could oust Cochrane here and get into the team. Because he was doing what Cochrane was doing a little bit more as well, in that he was contributing going forward, and he scored that goal, didn't he, as well? So I thought maybe he'll get in, and then obviously injured and out for God knows how long. But I think it depends. Sorry,
just to be clear, he can't play now until January, even if he's fit in November, can he? Because he's not been named in the squad. We don't think. Actually, we don't know yet, do we? We're assuming he's not going to be named, aren't we?
Yeah, unsure on the squad. So basically, the way Blues are going to cover the left back position until Buchanan is available to play is they're going to have Jack Robinson, Ethan Laird, Alphonse Samsel is still in the building, although I doubt we're going to see him, to be honest. I think he's going to be probably more used in training games and stuff like that to when they do 11v11 or whatever. But I think it depends. Left back's the position where they look light, and it depends kind of how quickly Buchanan gets back up to speed. The only other one, I think, striker Dykes, we can presume, I think, is probably going to be on his way in January. Unless something massively turns around and he ends up being the main striker and playing every week, I think for Scotland hopes he's probably going to want to be playing football regularly second half of the season. So if he moves, they'll need another striker.
Right, Alex, do we even want to go here now? It seemed like a good idea a few days ago, didn't it, when we put the running order together? Comparing Blues transfer window business to Wrexham's. Obviously, Wrexham caught the eye.
It's your obsession.
Maybe it is only me. Should we not even bother?
I mean, we can comment and say that Wrexham have done some pretty good business on the face of it, I think. The only one of their signings that I look at, and actually there are 2 of their signings I look at and think, you know what? Maybe Blues could have looked at them.
Okay, let's run through them then, and then we won't get too far into the weeds at the risk of being accused of SEO hunting. So they brought in Ryan Hardy, striker from Plymouth, Danny Ward, goalkeeper, Liberato Cacace, I think you pronounce it, a left back from Italy, George Thomason, Josh Windass, attacking midfielder, second forward, striker from Sheffield Wednesday, Lewis O'Brien, I think came from Forest, didn't he? Centre mid. Connor Cody from Leicester, centre back. Kiefer Moore. Where was Kiefer Moore? Sheffield United. Nathan Broadhead. A lot of money spent on Nathan Broadhead, a winger from Ipswich. Callum Doyle was at Man City, wasn't he? Centre back. Ben Sheaf from Coventry, centre mid. Oft injured centre mid, but quite a high pedigree. Dominic Hyam came from Blackburn, centre back, and Issa Kabore. Is he on loan from Man City?
Yeah,
he is. So, I think the net spend was people talking about they've spent about 30 million in transfers alone, and that sort of equating to a higher net spend than the likes of Premier League clubs like Bournemouth and Brighton, who actually traded, made money in the transfer market, and Brentford. Palace made money in the transfer market. Somehow Chelsea, I thought, only, a negative
they
3
always
million
somehow
net
make
spend.
money.
I cannot, fair play to whoever put those stats together. Wolves, Villa spent about 10 million, Fulham 19.5 million. So Wrexham they've pushed the boat out. Let's put it that way.
I think they had to spend, and the two players that I was referring to, Kiefer Moore is one of them. I know he's
indeed
the wrong side of 30 now, 32 or 33, isn't he? But even watching him in that player final for Sheffield United, I know he only scored 5 or 6 goals last season, but watching him in that player final, every single attack Sheffield United had in those first 60, 70 minutes, and they absolutely dominated Sunderland, came via Kiefer Moore knockdown, Kiefer Moore run. So I thought he looked excellent still. And it's he's the last 2 seasons he's been in a team that's, Ipswich went up and Sheffield United almost went up. So he's got pedigree of being right at the top of the championship, hasn't he?
Are we just delighting on him because we want to anoint a Djukovic successor potentially? and if you can't pick your way through the lock, then you kick the door in, and that's what Duke used to do. And Kiefer Moore, obviously a big physical presence and then quite aerially dominant. But yeah, I would happily have seen Kiefer Moore in the Blues squad. The other one, are you going to say O'Brien or Sheaf or neither of them, or Callum Doyle?
No, I'm just going for Callum Doyle, because that's the position where Blues,
the left-sided centre,
Yeah, I mean, he's a left side centre back, but he played a lot of left back for Norwich last year and can play a left back. So I think in the way that Wrexham play, it's a back three, isn't it? And he'll be the left side centre back. So that probably suits him best, doesn't it? Because it gives him a little bit of freedom with players behind him. But I think he'd have been again, 21 years old, £5 million last season at Norwich, virtually ever present, 1 goal, 7 assists. So I think he would have been a decent signing. But yeah, they're the only two I look at from Wrexham's business and think, they'd have been good. I like Sheaf. I really like Ben Sheaf, but like you say, Brian, he has had injury issues, and there's probably a reason why Coventry, who I expect to be near the top of the league this season, have let him go to Wrexham. Yeah,
very much. Matt Grimes is the orchestra of Frank Lampard's, is the conductor of Frank Lampard's orchestra there, very much. I guess just to finish this little bit off, I would say that Wrexham clearly had to spend more money, because Blues League One team, you could have airdropped it into the Championship at any point and thought, that's reasonably stable. Wrexham's League One team needed a lot doing to it to be competitive in the Championship, didn't it? Yeah,
it was. I mean, you can tell by the number of kind of stalwarts they've had over the last 5 years, 3-4 years. They've decided to let go, release some of them. O'Connell, Mullin, Fletcher, the striker Palmer as well. So they've basically ripped it up, haven't they? And started again, and they had to.
Right, let's move on then. Alex, thank you very much for your time. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this slightly belated, for various reasons, review of the transfer window and Blues start to the season. It's a big keep right on from both of us.